It's where we set the foundations for children for life. And if you're saying it's acceptable where they are learning in their very young years of their life, then we're saying it's acceptable for them to then go out in society and behave in the same way.
Joining me now is teacher Gemma Clark, who runs the Scottish Teachers for Positive Change and Wellbeing group, psychologist Dr Zara Brodie, who's worked closely with young adults with a history of violence, and Leanne Maguire, chair of the Glasgow City Parents Group. Thank you all so much for joining us. Gemma, as a teacher, what did you make of what Sarah and Elizabeth had gone through? I was really shocked. Stabbed with scissors, spat at, bitten. I mean, do these stories resonate with you? Is this what your colleagues are saying, telling you about?
Sadly, I wasn't surprised at all. We hear from teachers on a regular basis that are subjected to this kind of violence at work. So very sad to see, but not at all surprising.
And how do teachers then feel going into the classroom? Do they feel safe?
I'd say a lot of teachers don't feel safe going into schools right now. It can be a bit of a postcode lottery depending on where you're working, but there are a lot of teachers who just don't feel safe at work at the moment.
That is incredibly worrying. And Zara, what do you think is behind this rise in violence in Scottish classrooms?
Well, I think very much what we're seeing in schools is a mirror of what's happening in society at the moment. I think we're a very traumatised society, and we do know that experiences of adversity do lead to increased levels of aggressive and violent behaviour. So I think the more that we're seeing young people who are experiencing abuse and who are experiencing troublesome home environments, we're seeing the repercussions of those environments within the school, and unfortunately it seems to be falling very much to teachers to then deal with those repercussions at the moment.
So things like the cost of living crisis is very traumatic for many families, and you're seeing that mirrored in the way children are behaving in school?
Absolutely, yeah. Poverty is one of the main predictors of aggressive behaviour, because it is a traumatic environment to be within. And when we think about the rise in mental health issues in young people, those mental health issues that we see come from the home. The parents within that home, other members of the family, have those mental health issues and difficulties too.
And Leanne, so are parents aware of the scale of this problem and how bad it is for a lot of teachers?
The reality is I don't think parents really know the reality of it. What we're hearing is there's not a lot of communication come out from schools, particularly to families where it's maybe their young person that has been the perpetrator. They're not hearing so much about it. But the other kind of conversation when I've been speaking to parents and carers is they feel like it's something that's happening around them and that they're not involved in the conversation. Like we see it in the media, we see the horrible package that you've just shown, which is awful to hear, but it's almost like parents are detached from it. And it's like it's happening somewhere else. And Zara's just mentioned about teachers bear the brunt of that. Unfortunately, I think that is what's happening. There is a lot of weight put onto teachers to educate our young people and deal with everything else in their life.
But this behaviour is going to have an effect on the whole classroom. It's not just this one pupil who's badly behaved. It will have effect on everyone's education.
Yeah, I don't think the government really acknowledge that seeing violence in school is a trauma in and of itself, and that it's frightening for the young people in the classroom as well. If a young person sees a teacher being attacked, you know, they think if the teacher's not safe, then how can I be safe in this environment? And we're also, one of the unions found statistics showing that there's a lot of misogyny involved in it as well. So female teachers, 20% say that they're experiencing violence, verbal abuse on a regular basis, compared to only 3% of male teachers. So we need to look at the misogyny part of that as well.
That was another thing that really kind of shocked me when I was reading about it, that female teachers are much more likely to be subjected to violence. So where are they learning this behaviour from, Zara?
I think we really have seen almost a step backwards in misogyny and gender-based violence in recent years, and a lot of it does come from social media, from reality television shows where, you know, these sort of more stereotypical gender roles are really emphasised, and I think a lot more work needs to be done with younger people in particular to really have them understand the consequences of those kind of attitudes, and to work on recalibrating them almost. Yeah,
because you have men like Andrew Tate that a lot of young men seem to look up to, which is absolutely terrifying, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We hear a lot of really young boys talking about Andrew Tate, which is quite worrying, and they use a lot of his rhetoric, which they're too young to understand. But it's quite a widespread problem that definitely needs to be tackled. And obviously this toxic masculinity that boys are being groomed into, it does a lot of damage to the boys as well. It's very bad for them too.
Yeah. So did COVID make the whole issue of violence in classrooms worse then, do you think, Zara?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously for teachers in particular, that move onto online teaching, the additional workload that came with that was a really stressful and pressured time. And I think for a lot of young people who were living in perhaps more troubling households, they were confined to those households without the sort of respite that the school classroom and the teachers would usually be able to provide for them. So we almost saw that impact of trauma that was already there being compounded as we came out of the pandemic. And obviously for a lot of students, their developmental trajectory was really impeded by the pandemic, where a lot of the emotional and social developmental landmarks that you would see them go through in the classroom with the support of teachers were missed, really. And I think we're seeing that now with students who are less resilient, have far more trouble regulating their emotions and their behaviours, and just really struggle to cope in the social world now.
Yeah, would you agree with that, Leanne? And do you think parents have to bear some responsibility then for the kids' behaviour going back into the classrooms? Or is that unfair?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. During COVID, certainly us as parents, we all realised how difficult a job teaching is. We tried our best at home and a lot of us failed. But then what happened when the schools started opening back up, schools became a real community hub, and it almost felt like a lot of responsibility then got put onto the school to solve everything that was going on in a young person's life. I think part of that is because parents don't know how to manage it themselves, so I don't think it's always we'll leave it to the teachers. But we have then developed a bit of an environment like that, where we're now in a place where we do rely on the schools to solve all problems in a young person's life. And the reality is, as parents or carers, we are the primary caregivers, and we do need to take some responsibility ourselves as well and think, how can I be part of this solution? How can I support a young person? Because I'm sure as a parent and carer, you're not going to your work expecting to be abused or physically assaulted as well.
Do you think too much is put on teachers then?
Yeah, we can't solve all of society's problems as much as we would like to, but at the end of the day, class size in Scotland is 33. You have all these children and your primary job is to educate them. So we sometimes feel like we're being left to do the job of psychologists, social workers, kind of do it all and try and get 33 children on track with their learning at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, classrooms are a pressure cooker. Let's face it, they're stressful environments. And one of the speakers in your package said, if she only had the time to be able to spend with children, maybe that would help. But teachers just don't have that time. We've got young people with additional support needs, ranging from anxiety right to complex needs.
Yeah.
There's a mental health crisis with our young people, and there's not enough resources even outside of school, let alone inside of school.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to deal with in the classroom, isn't there? And let's talk now about consequences, because are pupils punished? What are the consequences? In one of the surveys, I think it was the EIS did, there was a quote from a teacher that said, when I got hit twice, I was forced to teach both pupils. They were in the same class, and was told their entitlement to an education was more important than me feeling safe at work. So do they get punished or expelled or...?
There's been a move away from consequences now, and a lot of teachers are saying that would be quite a kind of quick fix. I don't think anybody wants to return to draconian punishments or anything like that, but there has been a culture developed in a lot of schools where sort of anything goes. The young people aren't even getting a chance to learn that attacking people is wrong.
I mean, as a psychologist, is it, should children be punished? I know a lot of them are suffering from trauma. Do you have to balance that? That's very difficult.
Absolutely. I think with a lot of the work that's being done to move towards a more sort of trauma-informed or trauma-aware education system, it does tend to be misinterpreted almost as we shouldn't be punishing, we shouldn't be really disciplining or teaching our pupils what's right and wrong. And that's very much not the message that we should be giving. I think there do need to be consequences for actions, and it's about thinking about ways that we can, do that in a productive way, in a way that is helpful for child development. But I think for me, one of the things in relation to trauma-informed practice is a hugely important part that's often forgotten is the importance of supporting teachers in that. So we know that teachers in a classroom who are experiencing aggression, that's traumatic for them. They're experiencing trauma too. And it's really important that there's opportunities for them to be supported. That what the individual said on the package about they didn't even hear from their school for 2 weeks after that violent incident. It's just not acceptable.
I mean, the Scottish Government does recognise there's a problem, and Jenny Gold-Ruth announced that there'd be an extra $1 million towards supporting teachers in the school. But Leanne, what do you think should be done to try and tackle this problem? What's the parents' role?
I mean, I think there definitely needs to be more work done with parents. Again, what we're hearing is if there's incidents, it's not always getting back to the parent in the communication. I don't necessarily think one-to-one communication with a parent is helpful either. I would like to see more kind of group work with parents where you're actually letting parents know in a group what the consequences are, what's the reverberations in that class. Because I think it's very easy for parents to sweep it under the carpet when they're approached by the teacher or the campus officer to say there's been an incident with their child. But quite frankly, and I'm saying this as a parent, we need to actually start taking responsibility for our children's actions and supporting the staff that are trying their best to support our kids every day.
Gemma, what would be the biggest thing for you in terms of improving the situation?
There's a lot of things that could be done. Class size is 33. We could do with smaller class sizes. We could do with more support workers in class. We could do with professionals working with children. Because we can be given a lot of advice, but if you've got lots of needs in a class of 33, you can't do it all. So more funding, more staff, funding CAMHS appointments better. There's a lot of young people that need support with their mental health that just can't get appointments, can't get help. And I think as well, tackling this systemic misogyny that we're seeing. That's a pretty serious issue.
What would you say, Zara?
I'd really just echo what Gemma said, the idea that we really need to take more of a sort of system-wide, multi-agency approach. It's not enough to just think that the buck starts and stops with teachers. I think we need to include parents in the discussion. We need to have access to educational psychologists, to social work, etc. People who are trained to deal with this kind of behaviour. Because as you said earlier, that's not the job for the teachers.
Absolutely. There does seem to be a lot of pressure and responsibility on teachers. We will have to leave it there, but thank you all very much indeed for joining us this evening. Thank you. And that's all from Scotland Tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night.